Let's go over to the NFC North, a team that has had plenty of losing seasons in recent years. The Chicago Bears. Reason for optimism here. I mean, Caleb Williams comes in. Yeah. Tyson Bagent. It's going to be tough for Caleb to knock him for the starting job. We'll see if it happens. The first overall generation.
Don't forget about Brett Ripien.
You know what? I just saw they cut Nathan Peterman.
What?
They cut Nathan Peterman, the Bears did.
Yeah.
Travesty.
I mean, I think they still have 4 quarterbacks on the roster currently with Ripien and Austin Reed as well.
Austin Reed. I don't think I've ever heard that name before in my life, I'm going to be honest.
I'll be honest. It sounds like a baseball player.
I was say it sounds like a...
They just pulled someone from the White Sox because they're so bad.
They're right there. But the Chicago Bears, I mean, I'll just ask you point blank. Do you think this team is going to get into the playoffs this year?
No.
Okay, neither do I.
Don't think. Look, I'm not as I'm not buying into the Caleb hype as much as everybody else. I mean, there are people who are declaring the Bears going to a Super Bowl, and even if I love Caleb Williams as a prospect, how can you love a quarterback in Chicago and believe they're going to succeed until they do?
Yeah, the history has not been there. They have never had a 4,000-yard passer.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And, look, their quarterback situation in the past hasn't been great. Now, you have to give their GM as much credit as possible because he has put Caleb Williams in the best possible position to succeed. Running back room is great with DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, Travis Homer in the mix as well. I wouldn't be shocked if he's off the roster, though, come the regular season. But wide receivers, you add Keenan Allen. You extend DJ Moore so he's happy. You draft Rome Odunze at 9. This is an absolute weapon of a wide receiver room. I'm a big fan of Rome Odunze. Oh, and not to mention the fact they don't have 1. They don't have 2. They have 3 capable pass catchers at the tight end position with Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, and Mercedes Lewis.
Oh. Old man Lewis.
But offensively, they're set there. And defensively, don't forget, there's a ton of money being spent here. TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds as their linebackers are awesome. They brought in Kevin Byard to help out in the secondary. Jaquan Brisker, I happen to be a big fan of as well at the safety position. And they have depth on the defensive line. Don't forget, they traded for Montez Sweat last year.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's talent, but I'm not completely sold on Caleb Williams being able to just walk in and be a star, let alone even have I don't even know if he can have a CJ Stroud type season last year. And to be honest with you, it felt like the first 8 games, CJ Stroud was a game manager. Then they started letting him open it up. So it's not even like he just walked in and was miraculous. He had to prove that he wasn't going to turn the ball over. So I think that this division is going to prove to be a little bit too hard for Chicago. I think there's going to be improvement. The future's going to look bright. But it's weird because they weren't supposed to be picking number 1. I know it was Carolina's pick. But, they're going to be similar to a lot of teams that are picking in a number 1 spot. Usually you're picking there for a reason. Chicago, well, yes, the roster seems to be coming together. It looks like they found the quarterback. Ultimately, is Eberflus really a good coach? No, he's a defensive guy, and your offense does not have a legitimate, great offensive mind to plug in and help Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I mean, that was, at the end of the day, the thing that surprised me the most about Chicago's offseason is that they retained Eberflus. Now, he's a former Colts defensive coordinator, so obviously I like him. I always like to see the defensive guys get a chance at being a head coach. Above all else, though, I was surprised that it happened, but I like that it happened because at the end of the day, wherever your background is, I like when head coaches get time. He had 2 years otherwise, not a very good roster. Give the GM and coach time to build their roster, coach their team up. and let their vision take place. Maybe if it doesn't get anywhere, you look back and say we wasted too long on this. But if you pull the plug early, you'll never know what it was. And we'll see what Caleb Williams is. My question for you was going to be, do you see a CJ Stroud type season from him? And you answer that in the same sentence. No. So we'll see with Caleb Williams. If I didn't mention it earlier, they were 7-10 last year. So yeah, far away from earning the number 1 pick themselves. That came via Carolina. Their pick was 9th overall. So still towards the bottom of the league, top
Still
of
in
the
the top
draft.
10. That's
Yeah.
a lottery pick in other sports.
Exactly. And the projected win total 8.5. I think that's perfect. I think 8 or 9 wins, just missing out on the playoffs for Chicago. That's where I have them, because at the end of the day, this was a 7-win team last year, and they did nothing but improve their roster all over the place. The Vikings were also 7-10 last year, dealt with injuries. Kirk Cousins with an Achilles tear. Jefferson missed the middle chunk of the season. They let Kirko walk. Kirko chains. They bring in Sam Darnold, who was a former 3rd overall pick and has never really become anything in the NFL. They draft J.J. McCarthy. He was the 5th quarterback taken, if I'm not mistaken, out of 6
because
in
it
the first
was,
dozen
yeah,
picks.
you had.
And it was kind of the surprise going as early as he did. But the expectation is Darnold's going to start the season. We'll see how much of the season he remains the starter. I would think they would want to get McCarthy on the field at some point, but their projected win total sits lowest out of all the teams we're talking about today at 6.5. To be honest with you, that's about where I have them. I think 6 wins is their ceiling. The defense is still, you could poke holes in that all over the place. The offense, you have the best receiver in football. What else? This
Look,
is
I
going to come
think,
down to how can Jefferson will this team to more than 6 wins is where I see it.
well, I'm a higher on the Vikings than you are. I have to just come out and say that right off the bat. And the reason why is because they have a fantastic coach in Kevin O'Connell. He is a great coach. You saw how many games he was able to win with Josh Dobbs last year. Sam Darnold, yeah, he's had his issues. You know who else had their issues in the past? Geno Smith. And then he just needed the right situation and the right coaching staff. It's not like Seattle was loaded with talent when Geno Smith was their starter and he went and he beat Russell Wilson on Monday Night Football or whatever it was. That roster, yeah, they had some talent, but it's not like Seattle, we all thought they were going to be a 4 or 5 win team that year. And then they went and made the playoffs. That is the kind of effect I am feeling like is going to come from Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold is going to break out. I think Aaron Jones is definitely salty that the Green Bay Packers let him walk to bring in Josh Jacobs and pay a different running back. I think that there is definitely a bit of revenge feel there. Then, on top of that, you had Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, who might be one of the best 1-2 punch wide receiver rooms in the entire NFL. You have TJ Hawkinson, who's a top 5, some people would say a top 3 tight end in the NFL. So there are weapons on offense for Sam Darnold, to the likes of which he hasn't seen, because I'm going to say that his time in San Francisco didn't count because he barely played.
Yeah, backup.
So, this is his best supporting cast. This is his best coaching staff that he's worked with. And, defensively, the Vikings have only done things to try and get better. I don't love what they have defensively. I think defense is going to be their downfall. Harrison Smith just continues to get older. Jonathan Bullard is a solid piece in the D-line. But ultimately, the Vikings, they're going to go as far as Sam Darnold can take them, literally.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar sentiment. I like Kevin O'Connell, but remember 2 years ago when they were this almost like they just kept winning. Remember how many 1-score games they won? It was an astronomical number. And we said that's just not going to happen again. It didn't. They had injuries, of course. If Kirk and Jefferson played the entire year last year, probably more than 7 wins. But I think the biggest thing is when you lose that quarterback play and you're betting on Sam Darnold for the first time since he came in the league in 2018 to be above average or at least even average. Because I'm looking at the other 2 teams in this division and I don't see them catching up. Green Bay at 9-8, projected win total of 9.5. So right there again, I'm taking the over on that by a couple. To me, Green Bay can win 11 games and still finish second in this division.
No, it's not any different than Geno Smith going to Seattle.
I love that comp too.
Because what did Geno do that would have instilled confidence in you to say, yeah, that guy can be a starting quarterback in the NFL?
Nothing.
The butt fumble? That was Mark Sanchez. But
yeah,
either way, he succeeded him and was worse.
Then that's saying something. But I think you look at Dave Canales, and this is a future conversation, especially for Tampa, because he was there in Seattle. He leaves, goes to Tampa. Geno takes a step back. So when we talk about the West next week, what can Geno do? We're going to have the same conversation. Seattle will go as far as Geno can take them. Mm-hmm. Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield, resurgent season. Now Canales is gone. What are we going to talk about Tampa in a couple weeks? But for the Vikings, it's as much that as it is this division. And this is why talking about these 2 divisions works so well, because they're both stacked. If things go right for the Vikings, here's my bold prediction that I forget if I mentioned it on air at the start or before we hit the record button. You could convince me that all 8 of these teams not only have winning records, but get into the playoffs.
It's possible. I can see all 3 of these teams, especially in the NFC. The NFC is very weak. The AFC, not so much, just because you're not going to get all 3 wild cards from one division with how talented it is. Especially, you look at the AFC East, Miami, Buffalo, New York Jets. Those are 3 playoff caliber teams right there as well. You look at the South, Indianapolis, playoff caliber team. They have playoff expectations. Jacksonville, playoff expectations. Houston, they are a playoff team. So, you're going to tell me that between the Jets, Dolphins, Bills, Colts, Texans, and Jaguars, only 2 of those 6 teams are making the playoffs because they won their division? You think that those 4 teams in the AFC North having to play against each other in the AFC North have a possibility of having a better record than all 3 teams in the AFC South?
It is a non-zero chance, yes. Now, does that mean it's a 1% chance and this is a cop-out answer? That's 100% yes. But you look at it. The Bengals were 9-8 last year, and they were just one more game. They would have been.
But that's exactly my point. They were above 500. Every team in this division was above 500.
And the Bengals were the only
team still didn't happen.
It was close, though, is what I'm saying.
It was close a couple years ago in the NFC, too, with Washington, when the Giants made the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it would be the first.
There's just not enough wins in the division. When you have to play, let's say you split everybody in your division, you now have to what? Go and win 7 out of you're not go 7-3 the rest of the way?
And if Joe Burrow was healthy all year last year, you don't think it would have happened?
No. I think it would have been someone else that's bounced out from that division. I mean, like, Pittsburgh isn't, there. I don't think Pittsburgh does what they do.
Yeah. That's fair. I'm just saying that this is in the range of outcomes.
I feel like the biggest thing is the AFC. The AFC itself is just too good.
Yeah.
To have all the wild cards from one team. The NFC, on the other hand, the only team that you can argue really realistically, is saying is, they're for sure a playoff team, playoff aspirations. Wouldn't be a division winner out of the NFC North would be the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. There isn't a second team in the South. There isn't a second team in the West. Seattle?
The Rams?
The Rams, yes. Okay. The Rams, and, a lot of people are very, low on the Rams this year, but you got to remember they lost Aaron Donald. Their defense isn't anywhere where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Offensively, yes, they have weapons. Stafford's getting older, though.
Stafford's older, Cup's
There's
older.
just,
And
there's
again,
a lot.
Raheem Morris, too, out the door.
Mm-hmm. There are just a lot more pieces. So we just said there's only 2 contenders outside of the NFC North that we see vying for the wild card spot. So it's just a lot more, there's just a lot less competition in the NFC to try and take it. And there are a lot more wins you can grab in the NFC as opposed to the AFC.
Yeah. Let's talk about Green Bay quick. Again, 9-8 last year, 9.5 projected win total this year. Jordan Love, we sat around a couple years. They did the same thing with Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre. And, oh, man, if they did it again, because it looks like they did it again.
Well,
last year we said,
the contract they just gave him, they said they did.
Last year we said it's all dependent on Jordan Love. Really halfway through the year, he showed up. They balled out. Very close to knocking San Francisco off in the divisional round, and they would have had a 3rd game against Detroit in the conference championship. Again, I said it, 9.5 win total feels too low for Green Bay. This offense, I mean, if Christian Watson gets his hamstring issue figured out, that's an explosive player. Jaden Reed, the one I alluded to earlier, you loved him. I loved him. I got him from you in our dynasty trade. Jaden Reed is just a baller. I think he's going to break out this year. Second year wide receiver jumps. That's typically things you look for, especially in fantasy football. Jaden Reed has it written all over. I know Dontavian Wicks is a huge sleeper name I want to mention. Not to forget Romeo Doubs. They bring in Josh Jacobs. How much of an upgrade really is he over Aaron Jones?
With what Jones gave them last year, tremendous. With what Josh Jacobs gave the Raiders last year, not so much.
Not so much.
Look, I think that this was the better move. I said Aaron Jones is going to have a little angst towards this, but as an organization, this definitely was the better move. I have such an issue with paying Jordan Love and making him the highest paid per year quarterback after 10 good games.
Yep.
So just out of that, I'm going to say, look out for Green Bay to take a step back this year and not be what everyone thinks that they're going to be. Because Jordan Love, he just doesn't have the track record. I've seen him look just as bad in as many games as he's looked good. I had the luxury, thanks to Corey, our friend, bringing me to the Monday Night Football Tommy DeVito game. Jordan Love looked horrible against a Giants defense that everyone is saying this year is awful. Well, the only other piece that they had last year was Xavier McKinney, and he's gone. So it's not like the Giants had a ton of people on this defense that, shut Jordan Love down. He can disappear. I'm not saying that he's a bad quarterback. I did write him off on one of the pods last year, but we'll forget about that.
He didn't write back yet.
Look, it's just not a big enough sample size to say this guy is the future of the league and going to challenge the Detroit Lions for supremacy in this division just yet. I love their offensive weapons, as you were alluding to with Jaden Reed. Big fan of Jaden Reed. There are a lot of mouths that Jordan Love can feed on this offense, and that is awesome for him. Christian Watson obviously has to stay healthy, but I like A.J. Dillon as well as a nice change of pace with Josh Jacobs. Marshawn Lloyd isn't bad either. He's a good option to have. Bo Melton, their number 5 wide receiver behind Dontavian Wicks. And look, the way that the Packers used wide receivers last year, don't be surprised if he's getting targets as well. This is a very well-coached team offensively with Matt LaFleur. Green Bay brings in some pieces. The name I alluded to just before, by the way, coming off the Giants, Xavier McKinney, making him the highest paid safety in the league, I believe, when he signed that contract. So, Green Bay, they did do some things to try and improve this defense, improve the secondary. As long as Jair Alexander still patrols that left cornerback spot, I believe they're going to have some issues. But I'm just not sold on Jordan Love being the prophet just yet still. It's been 10 games.
That's fair. I mean, he put it out there. He needs to prove that that's him. This is kind of not, I think Jordan Love, I don't think it's a debate. He's better than Geno Smith, but that was the whole thing. Geno Smith has this great season and then comes back to earth a little bit. I said the same thing about Pat Mahomes had a historic 2018. I said, I just need to see it again. I've seen it again tenfold since then, but it's the same sentiment. What can Jordan Love now? He was a complete question mark. Now we're just asking, can we be sure about it?
Well, look at Trevor Lawrence. He had a good 8-game stretch to end the season in 22-23. Has a good 8-game stretch to start the season last year, and then completely falls off. Yeah. I know he had some injuries, but like as a whole, they're sitting there putting up Trevor Lawrence's career stats next to Daniel Jones. Like that's who he's being compared to. So it's just, and Trevor Lawrence is a much better prospect than Jordan Love. So there are a lot of questions I still have. I'm not trying to sound like a hater. I'm not trying to be a doubter, but he has not shown enough to be the highest paid quarterback in the league. He just simply hasn't.
It goes back to our Ayuk discussion. I said, this is just the nature of the business. Every new contract is going to be the highest.
The players are genius for holding out. I just can't believe that teams, are just giving in and paying on them. These guys aren't going to hold out and not play. You saw what happened to Le'Veon Bell. You're telling me Jordan Love wasn't going to play football this season and then head into a free agency where he had to go and try to sign after seeing what happened to Deshaun Watson after taking an extended time off. Like, these guys aren't going to not play. It doesn't make sense why you wouldn't need a bigger sample size from Jordan Love. I get that it's not his fault he sat for so long, but come on.
It's the nature of it. We'll never understand it. We'll never agree with it, but it is what it is.
Good for him.
The Detroit Lions, he got paid. He doesn't have to complain about anything. Detroit Lions 12-5. Man, it just feels good to say the Lions were 12-5.
We were doing our best to speak this into existence last year. And we all had a good feeling about the Lions.
You're welcome, Detroit.
Yeah. We all, I mean, look, it was the way that they finished the previous year. You just had a feeling everything kind of started to click around week 9 or 10. And talk about a team that's only getting better. I mean, you keep your running back room of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You make Jared Goff, your quarterback of the future. You give him the extension. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown as your number one. He's locked in. You have Jameson Williams, who's expected to take a jump this year. Oh, and by the way, Sam Laporta, who broke out in a huge way as a rookie tight end last year, on top of a defense that is only getting better.
Yeah. Defensively, the only spot you could really poke a hole in was the secondary, and they went and drafted 2 corners very highly in the draft. Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, man. I don't think much more needs to be said about Detroit. They've built this thing the right way with the right pieces, and I have every expectation. I mean, you said it. They finished 2022. I think them going into Lambeau Field, last game of the regular season, Green Bay was win and you're in, and that was Aaron Rodgers, his last game in Green Bay. It ended up being that is going to be a definitive moment, I think, in Lions history, especially in this modern era. And then they have the season they did all the way to the conference championship game, fell short. I have no reason why they shouldn't be there again or shouldn't be favored to be there again because, like you said, they didn't lose anybody, really. They've only added pieces. It's their younger players, another year under their belt. They've had a taste now. 2 impressive playoff victories, both at home. So maybe you want to see him go on the road. That's the biggest knock, right? Is Jared Goff on the road or playing outdoors? They don't have to do that much this year. So Lions.
And to be honest with you, Jared Goff has gone out and proved things. People, and I said this last year, people forget that he led the Rams to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, he played in a Super Bowl. Yeah, he looked horrible against Bill Belichick. But who doesn't? Right? Like, Bill has done that so many times in his career. And Sean McVay came out and said, like, that was an instance where he just was out coached. So, Jared Goff is a guy I have faith in him. He is 100% a top 4 quarterback in the NFC. Might even be a top 3.
Yeah, I can't think of many other names. I mean, Hurts.
You have Jalen Hurts, Brock Purdy.
Maybe. Right?
Well, that's I wouldn't say.
I think Hurts is the only non-debatable one.
Well, yeah, and I mean,
we need Purdy. You could debate Dak.
Look, it could be, and also too, Caleb Williams, JT Daniels. Let's see how they do. Dylan would be mad if I didn't say Michael Penix, but Kirk Cousins maybe. But
again, all debatable.
Yeah, they
could be the second best in the conference. With probably
a lot of people would probably put Dak ahead of him. It's not debatable, and honestly, a lot of people are saying that Dak is over Hurts.
That's ridiculous. I think it is.
Why did Philly collapse last year?
I think Hurts.
Exactly. So what do we know about Jalen Hurts?
I know he was in a Super Bowl and was unstoppable for a year and a half.
Okay, so was Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence wasn't in a Super Bowl.
He wasn't in a Super Bowl, but he felt unstoppable for about a calendar year.
Did he?
From the 8 games at the end of the season
to the 8 the next.
Yeah,
I don't know if he
felt 8-1 to start the year.
8-3,
7-1 then.
Whatever it was.
Like, they had some crazy good record to start the year.
I guess we'll have this conversation for the NFC East then. Jalen Hurts versus Dak Prescott.
At the end of the day, though, we're saying Jared Goff, we're giving you your flowers. Yeah. Jared Goff, you're a top 3 quarterback in the NFC. We're declaring it now.
We're going off on a tangent here, but Jared Goff, we love you. Keep doing your thing. Detroit, the Motor City. I have another big expectation for them as well this year, but my NFC North predictions, Detroit, I think will match 12-13 wins off for them. Green Bay, a couple steps behind. I'll take the Bears over the Vikings narrowly, with probably both missing the playoffs. If we get the best outcome for those two, then maybe, I'll formate the playoffs. But I have Lions, Packers, Bears, Vikings.
Yeah, I have it in the same order as you, actually. I do have Lions, Packers, Bears, Vikings. I think the Bears and Vikings are going to have the same record, though. I think they're both going to finish with 7 or 8 wins.
All right. Fair enough. We'll get Corey just to give his division predictions at the start of next week's show for these divisions. We don't want to let him feel left out, but we'll be back next week with Corey, hopefully. He's been off doing side quests. He's meeting John Hamm at Mets games?
That was the Yankees game. He ran into John Hamm. You have to realize with Corey, he was in Pittsburgh to see the Yankees play a couple years ago, but just happens to stumble upon Aaron Judge's wife, which then leads you to stumble upon Aaron Judge. So he's done this throughout. There's a funny story back when we were in high school where Corey went to a AA baseball game. The Mets catcher at the time was there on a rehab assignment. So Corey, being a Yankee fan, wasn't going to have him sign his his hat or anything. Didn't have anything to give him. So he gave him a bottle of OxyClean laundry detergent to sign.
My goodness.
Because that was the giveaway at the AA baseball game that day. So Travis Darno, if you are happening to listen to this, we still remember that.
How about
Corey runs into the most random people, random famous people.
We'll get Corey to give us a story next week, and we'll talk about the NFC West and the AFC West, the two divisions that have produced a lot of top winning with Kansas City, San Francisco, and the Rams. We'll talk about those divisions next week. Thank you again for listening. We're back, another season, the Outsider Sports Football Podcast. Thank you for being here with us.